Every life has a soundtrack. Join me as we invite guests to share their journey through music, one song at a time. 10 moments, 10 memories. I'm your host, Sean, and welcome to 10 Tracks.
Are you ready?
Welcome to 10 Tracks. My guest today is fellow New Orleans native, Grammy award-winning drummer, educator, and performer, most notable with the band Galactic, Mr. Stanton Moore.
What's happening, Sean? Good to see you.
Hey, Stanton. Welcome to 10 Tracks.
Yes,
First
indeed.
off, I know that your travel schedule is insane. So where are you in the world today?
Yes, I am at home right now, and I'm talking to you from my office at the house where I have a small kit that you can see behind me. And so I practice in this office. I also do some Zoom lessons from this office. So it's nice to have a place to kind of, settle in and a lot of my work is scheduling and, hey, are you available this date? And then, cross-referencing and making sure. So to be home and do a lot of that from here is nice.
And home is New Orleans.
Yes, yeah. So we're uptown now, still in New Orleans, and I love it. I can't imagine living anywhere else for me, for what I do. It's still, I love it.
Now, just for the listeners who aren't familiar, you obviously are quite known, especially with Galactic and your music. But you and I have known each other since we were teenagers.
Yeah,
It's sad. It's a long time. So
a
probably,
long
I
time.
think, were you still in high school, or were we both still in high school when we first met?
I was still in high school. I recall that I was 16, and since you brought it up, I played my first gig in front of people, in front of a paying audience with you,
That's
with
right.
with a band we had called Wrath of James, and I we played at. So I tell this story, often. People are like, well, what was your first gig? But I rarely am I, on a podcast with one of the people that I actually played the gig with. So it's kind of cool to talk about it with you. And as you know, but for the listeners, it was at Muddy Waters, which is on Oak Street. And now I play Wednesday nights when I'm in town. I play a weekly at the Maple Leaf, which is across the street. So I drive by there at least once a week when I'm in town. And, I can't not think of this is the street that I played my first gig on, so
I think we
interesting.
played there about 5 or 6 times. And
Yeah.
fun fact, that also was called Jed's before it was Muddy Waters.
Yes.
And I actually saw Black Flag there.
Yep.
Like one of their last albums. Everybody, I was too young to get in because I was like 15 at the time, and everybody used the same fake ID to get in. There was maybe about 20 of us there because they didn't have nobody came to the show, which is strange that Black Flag was so iconic now, but
Right.
nobody was there. But and that was Henry Rollins.
Yep.
Um,
I wasn't able
and
to make it to that show. I think I'm maybe 1 year or 2 years younger than you, maybe. So I think I was even younger. And I of course, everybody talked about that show, but I wasn't able to make it to that one. But then once I, was about the age that we started playing in bands, I was going to a lot of shows, a lot of, punk rock shows too.
yeah, but I mean, you started playing the drums at an early age, right?
I actually started, I think I got my first drum set at about 12. So, and maybe started playing in the school band at like 9 or 10 in the grammar school band. So I feel like I didn't get as early of a start as some of my buddies who started, at really young ages, 3 years old, 4 years old. So I wouldn't say I got started at an early age, but once I got into it, I got heavily into it. And was playing on the marching band at Brother Martin High School. And then that's when I decided to kind of start getting serious and taking private lessons with Marty Hurley. And, for the listeners who aren't familiar, Brother Martin had a legendary drum instructor, and his name was Marty Hurley, and he's known around the world as a great rudimental instructor. So it was just very fortuitous that I was able to study with him. And once I told him that I wanted to get serious, then I started taking private lessons with him. So by the time we got together in the band, that's about when I was starting to get more serious about.
Yeah. And you had already kind of had some drum influences by then. I mean, I think you already kind of had a feel. You had quite a your own sound. I remember from even those early days, it was quite. I know, obviously, the punk and kind of maybe heavier music, but then you also had New Orleans style, the brass from the marching band, as well as, I mean, I could see it now, but I mean, this massive funk influence as well.
Yeah, and I'm glad that by that influences by that time, and a lot of what I included in our 10 tracks are things that impacted me when I was around that age. And they impacted me so much so that they've stuck with me and have formed who I am even today as a musician. So, yes, by the time I was that age, that's when I really started becoming like a sponge. And that was kind of my formative years that formed who I am still today. So, I don't know when you want to start mentioning the tracks, but you'll see there's a wide range there, but it'll be fun to get into it because that wide range still very much impacts who I am today and what I'm doing right now in my career.
Do you think that anybody who knows you or follows your music is going to be surprised by any of the tracks you picked here?
To be honest, I don't think so. To be honest, if you know my music at all, it'll be super obvious. Maybe too obvious.
Yeah. Well, let's dive into track one. This is John Coltrane, Afro-Blue. Now,
Yes.
you specifically suggested the Birdland Jazz Club in New York City in 1963 version. Tell me
Yes.
about that.
Okay, so this super impacted me, and I'm not exaggerating. I think you might have been around. I think we were all at a party, and we were like 16, 17 years old, and Duke Strawby pulled me
Yeah.
aside and said, "Hey man, you need to hear this." And we went into somebody's room that had a stereo, and he played this for me, and it blew my mind because, to your point, at the time, I was super into punk rock and also listening to classic rock and skateboarding at the time. So I was just full of energy, bouncing off the walls, but I wanted to become a better drummer. So I was starting to study jazz, and I was playing in the school stage band, jazz band. This is while I was at Brother Martin, and so Duke played this for me, and he's like, "I think you're gonna really dig this." And this was the first time I really heard Elvin Jones, and then I was like, "Oh my God, you can play jazz like that!" Like he was playing with so much energy. Now this is before, this record is 63, I believe. So it's
Yeah.
before punk rock, but he was playing with this punk rock energy. And it really resonated with me. I was like, I had never heard anything like it. And I was like, oh my God, you can play jazz with this kind of energy, this kind of abandon, this kind of attitude, and this kind of just raw emotional creativity. And it changed my whole perspective of music.
I mean, this is about a 10-minute long song. And I mean, I don't really realize when he stops. I mean, he is going at it, the drum,
Yes.
Elvin Jones. He's just like constant. And I actually saw this tribute thing here in France a couple of weeks ago, and it was a guy who's obviously paying homage to John Coltrane, and did a whole evening of tribute songs of John Coltrane, and ended with a Love Supreme. And that was just to even hear a version of Love Supreme live was incredible. Even though it was, you know, another artist, it was still there in interpretation. But I mean, Coltrane's had so many great albums and stuff that he's done. One of his, I think, more abstract was it Impressions?
Yeah,
That's
impressions.
pretty like that one's probably not as accessible as some of his other stuff, I would say.
Well, he past that period, he got even more experimental, and then you get
Yeah,
all the way into stuff like interstellar space, and where it's very avant-garde, and very challenging music. But this period with the classic quartet, the same quartet that played Love Supreme, and this quartet to me, which is before he went into like interstellar space and some of the even more avant-garde stuff. But this quartet to me, just you can't. I picked this one song because this is the song that I remember hearing that really impacted me. But it, you can't go wrong with that, any of that quartet.
I actually forgot how eclectic taste Duke had,
Yeah,
because I remember nights with hanging out with him and playing music. We'd always trying to fight for airtime in the car for your cassette tape. So,
yeah,
but Duke always had interesting kind of out there, or definitely not the typical songs which you're expecting to hear. So
right,
it's a great
exactly.
story.
Yeah, and I still remember that to this day. I mean, it just really flipped a switch for me.
We get to track two. This kind of stays into the same era. It's actually 1960. This is Miles Davis off of the album Sketches of Spain.
Yes.
And this Concerto de, I'm going to butcher that for any
Yeah,
Spanish
I'm
fans.
not gonna attempt to say it either, but it is the first.
Aranjuez.
It's the first track off of Sketches of Spain, and this is one of those records that you put on and it instantly creates a vibe.
Yeah.
And you put this record on, and nobody's going to be mad at you putting on this record. Nobody's going to be like, oh, I don't know, this is kind of slow, or this is, you put it on, people are like, whoa. Like, if they've heard it, they're like, ah, great choice. If they haven't heard it, they're like, what is this? This is absolutely rivetingly beautiful, right?
Yeah.
And raw, and because Miles has a very vulnerable and at times raw sound on the trumpet, and instantly recognizable, and such an artist. And when you put this record on, the vibe is almost palpable, right? It's just like,
Yeah.
oh, and you feel, just thinking about it, I feel decompression, right? It's one of those records you can put on time and time again, and you just take a breath. It's like your soul takes a breath when you hear these first notes.
I mean, every time I listen to Miles Davis, and he has so many beautiful songs, or so much that he's like a painter. To me, it's just like this is another canvas he's just created for you. I've been listening to. I got it somehow. Some shared with me, Generique, and I think he used that from a French film, and so somehow I heard it the last couple of years, and it's again, it's that kind of slow, cool Miles, kind of dark, and just like you'd hear it late, but he just somehow this song and that album, this album, Sketches of Spain, Gil Evans conducted it and arranged a lot of this, and I
Yes.
mean he's kind of done his own stuff too, from what I remember.
Yeah. Yeah. And but that partnership of Miles and Gil Evans was just one of those things that was just the whole of them together was just greater than the sum of its parts.
Yeah. Um, let's talk a little bit about Galactic. Now, this is you've been with these guys. You created this what, over 25 years ago?
Yeah. I mean, I hate to say it, but really going on 30 years, and I'm not exaggerating. Like
Yeah.
the bass player, Robert Mercurio, him and I, and the guitar player, Jeff Rains, we started rehearsing together in November of 1992.
Wow.
And then we started gigging in 93 and 94, made our first record in 95, and hit the road on August 29th of 1996. So, if you consider Galactic started when we made the first record or when we played our first out of state gig, touring, I guess we've been celebrating I guess we've been celebrating anniversaries with when we made the first record, right? Like that's went into Sea Saint Studio, which was Alan Toussaint's studio, which is where they made a lot of Dr. John and Meters records, and a whole lot of classic records were made in that studio, and it was still operational in 1995 when we made the record. So
Wow.
now we're in 25, right? So it's 30 years that since we made our first record.
And do you consistently tour or travel like 100 dates a year? Is that quite normal?
Yes. So pre-COVID, we were averaging 100 dates a year, maybe even a little more, and for 25 years. So
Yeah.
when COVID happened, we did our East Coast leg of the tour, 3 weeks on the East Coast in a bus, came home, and then we were about to leave for 3 weeks on the West Coast, and then that's when everything shut down. So we did not do the West Coast tour until 2022, maybe. So we had to kind of shut down as everybody did, and then we picked up and did the West Coast. We had to replan all of that. But point being, our 2025 anniversary, our 25th anniversary was in 2020, and
Yeah.
then and now we're in 2025, and so I've kind of said, let's hold off on celebrating any anniversaries because when we were trying to celebrate our 10th year anniversary, that got canceled because of Katrina, right? We had
Yeah.
2 nights planned at Tips, and then 25th anniversary, we had this big tour planned, and here comes COVID. So I'm like, anytime we try to celebrate a big anniversary, something catastrophic happens. So I'm like, we're just gonna not worry about that right now. So.
Do you ever come over here or Europe or anywhere else and play any of the festivals?
Oh yeah. So we were just there in July and we played the Django Reinhardt Festival in Fontainebleau.
Oh
So we
yeah.
were there. And then, I do come over there and play, but not too often, because especially with Galactic being 7 musicians, it's, the overhead of getting over there just makes it challenging. So we do come over there, but we don't come over there as much as we play the States.
Yeah. Now, when you're playing more solo, are you playing mostly in New Orleans or around the South, or are you touring around the States as well?
Touring around the States a lot. So, I've got a piano trio that is more on the jazz end of the spectrum. And we may do things like several nights at the Blue Note in New York, or, Jazz Alley in Seattle, or, different things where we go and play multiple nights. I've also got a project with Eric Krasno Moore Project, and we'll play maybe the Blue Note, or we recently did Garcia's in Chicago, or, there's a number of different places that we go play. And then I have an organ trio, right? And that's with Robert Walter, Will Bernard. And so I, when I do those things, there are these venues and these circuits that we tap into. And it's usually not a regional thing. It's usually we go to the markets that we do well in. So like San Francisco and Seattle, Portland on the West Coast, or
Mhm.
New York, Philly, DC, all that kind of stuff on the East Coast. And then we do well in Denver and Colorado as well. And I say all that, I'm skipping over a lot of markets that, but we play a lot of all these different markets. So it's so easy to just jump on a flight. So what we do is we fly to where our strongest markets are. And then with Galactic coming out of COVID, we used to do a lot of bus tours where you're hitting the secondary and tertiary markets. But coming out of COVID, we want to be home a little bit more. So now we're just flying to our most primary markets instead of filling it all in with secondary and tertiary.
You've got a new record coming out for
Yes.
Galactic, and this is with the queen of New Orleans sound. I don't know who's probably more esteemed in New Orleans than, growing up. She was the icon there, Miss
Yeah,
Irma Thomas.
and still is. And she's 84 now. And so the record came out on April 11th of this year. So it came out in April, and we worked long and hard on it, and we've assembled a really strong team of writers who are much better writing vocal and lyrical content than we are. So we come up with the instrumental stuff, and then we have some writers really help us flesh everything out. And so one writer in particular, Sean C, that's his name, Sean Carey, Sean C helped us, and he started coming up, showing us up to the studio when Irma would be tracking something, and then in having conversations with her, he would listen to what her stories were and her life experience, and he started writing from her perspective, and she was able to really appreciate that he was writing, and she felt like this, I would write this, I would sing this, and so she was able to really invest in the tunes. So the more we worked on stuff, the better we got. And so now we really have a good stable of writers that we can call upon to help us write and flesh stuff out. So the process was a long process, but we really were able to dial it in, and hopefully it'll be a more streamlined process in the future. But it took us over 2 years to complete this record, because, a lot of times we were touring, and, it would take us some time to let the writers work on stuff and get it back to us. And then we've got to figure out a time to go in with Irma and have her sing stuff, and then edit it and work on it. And then we're out on the road. And then, so the whole process was a timely process, but we're very excited about the way that it turned out. I'm very proud of the record.
Her voice still sounds amazing.
Yeah.
Just listening to it, it's got that it's still full of power. So I guess for you to be in the studio with her and to kind of hear it as you're putting it down, it must have been incredible.
Yeah, it's incredible. And, I was very fortunate to get called to play drums on a record she did shortly after Katrina, a record called After the Rain, and that record won a Grammy. So, my one Grammy so far is with Irma. So we have a nice rapport, and she's always been very sweet to me. And so it's great to do another record with her. And we went and did Newport Jazz Festival last summer, and we did Central Park with her. And then we had her at Jazz Fest this year because the record was coming out in April. And so I think we played our actual Jazz Fest date on the main stage with her right before Lenny Kravitz. And we played that. It was actually in May, but, to celebrate the record. And so, we have done some shows with her, and we will continue to. But it's great to have this record out, and then she's been in great spirits. The response she's been getting from the record has been really, really good, and the reviews and all of that. So when she came and did some songs with us at Jazz Fest. She was in great spirits. I mean, it was really, really awesome. So it's great to work with her. And as you said, I mean, she's such an iconic figure. And to get to make the record and then also play some shows with her is, I feel very grateful for that.
We get to track three. You know, going from the queen of kind of New Orleans sound, this is the king of funk and soul.
Yes.
James Brown. There was a time.
Yes. And I picked this one because of course, if you want to play funk, you have to study and invest yourself into the music of James Brown, which I have a lot. And then this track is a live track, and the band was firing on all cylinders. And once again, the energy of this just resonated with me when I heard it when I was, I don't know, 18, 19, somewhere around there. And I heard this and I was like, again, oh my God, this is so powerful, right? And at this time in my development, I was going out a lot to hear a lot of music, and I was going out to hear Russell Baptiste, and Russell Baptiste was playing drums with the Funky Meters and George Porter Jr. And I met Russell when I was 17, right?
Mm-hmm.
That period of time for me was just very pivotal and very, you know, it was part of my development. It was a lot of things that still stick with me now. I discovered at 16, 17, 18 in those years, right? So I remember meeting Russell when I was 17, and he played with such absolute joy, reckless abandon, and a level of punk rock energy.
Yeah.
I don't think he was listening to a lot of punk rock at that time, but he played with that kind of energy. And then it's funny, once he was like, I don't know, unfortunately, we lost him when he was at the age of 57. But probably a few years before we lost him, he was probably in his early 50s, and he was playing with a punk rock band because he just has that kind of energy. So I discovered Russell, and I was just like, oh my God. And I started setting up his drums, driving him around, being his drum tech. But this James Brown track has that kind of energy, right? That kind of almost punk rock level, just it's like, oh my God. So this track resonates with me in the way that Russell resonates with me. And, that Elvin track, classic jazz with punk rock energy.
And I mean, and James Brown was, people might say whatever they want about him politically or, this and that. But when he was on stage, him like running the band and like having it as tight as possible. I had another guest talking about James Brown and picked the song and just saying how, he could hear if somebody was off a note or something and just kind of give him a look while on stage and just keep the show going. And just, so as much as people thought he was just a performer and just a stage man, he actually kind of ran a tight ship. But I mean, that's where his whole band sounded so tight and so like put together.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, as you say, he ran a tight ship, and he was very aware of everything that was going on musically and business wise, and everything that was happening around him and in his orbit. He was very aware of that, and you hear the results of that, and it's astounding, the bands that he put together, and especially when you listen to these live recordings, it's astounding. And people have said, and I'm very fortunate that I got to play and tour Europe with Maceo Parker, who
Mm-hmm.
was his saxophone player, started on tenor and then eventually wound up playing alto. But I got to play with Maceo, and hear a lot of, James Brown stories and all of this. But it's been said, and I'll agree, that as great as James Brown's musicians were, even Maceo Parker never had anything that sounded like James Brown's bands, right? James Brown had this thing and he drove his musicians to a point of the result is evident in this one track. And
Mhm.
as great as Maceo is and all the other musicians, James Brown's bands under James Brown's direction were just something that were on a level that just I don't think we'll ever hear again.
Yeah. There's so many great songs too that James Brown, and just his sound, and it's no surprise why he's always sampled, and kind of was it probably was a segue from his music to hip hop uh in the early days because of the sound he came up with.
Yes.
We get to track 4. Now this is Good Times Bad Times, first LP from Led Zeppelin. When you hear this album, and obviously their drummer, John Bonham, but like, are you hearing the drums first, or do you hear the whole package, or what's first that stands out for you the most?
That's a great question. And I would say the whole package. And then, even though I'm a drummer, and the reason I put this track is this track resonates with me more and more as I get older. So when I first heard this song, I don't think it even impacted me as much as, say, Black Dog or, um, you know, When the Levee Breaks or like
Yeah,
so many other songs. I could have picked any Led Zeppelin song, right?
yeah.
And I used to practice and play along to Physical Graffiti, right? So that whole record I absolutely love. But this song, the older I get, the more I appreciate this song for multiple reasons because it's the first song on their first record. And the more that as a kid, you're like, oh, yeah, that's cool. All right. I understand that. But then as I grow and develop as an artist and I try to really play those parts note for note, it's astounding what he did just in that first song. Like compositionally, the grooves that he's playing, right? So doom doom gaga goom gaga gaga a doom doom gaga goom gaga a boom boom goom ga goom gaga ga stone goom gaga goom gaga ga goom goom da brum brum brum, right? The footwork is
Hmm.
I'm still working on it to this day. Like there are not a lot of drummers who can physically play what he played on the bass drum. And so that's one aspect of it that is astounding is that the physical difficulty of what it is, but then the creativity of it, right? The way that he was playing cowbell and incorporating the toms in a groove. Nobody else was doing that. So the aspect of, cowbell, toms incorporated, physically challenging bass drum work that nobody had done yet, right? And you add all of that up and then consider that it was the first song on their first record. This is the first thing that people heard from them. And then you consider that he was 20 years old when he did it.
Hmm.
It's
It's
just it's astounding. And I appreciate it more and more. It's like a fine wine. It just keeps getting better. And I have more and more appreciation for it the more I grow and develop.
and this is from 1969. So when you mentioned the bass drum, this is I heard that he had a single pedal, but
Yes.
it somehow came, the way he played it was almost like a triple, rapid fire triple effect or something like
Yes.
that, is the, I don't know the wording, but
Yeah.
if that's
triplets. So triplets being like triplet, 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 right? And so one triplet, two triplet, three triplet, four triplet. So he would play. So he's playing eighth notes in the left foot, right, in the hi hat. So chit 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 chit, and in the right foot is going chitoto 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 chitoto. Okay, but quicker it's like I can't even sing it fast, but chickada 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 boom, right? But so there was a drummer, Carmine Appice, who played in Vanilla Fudge, and Led Zeppelin opened for Vanilla Fudge, and I think maybe it was '68 before this record came out, and Carmine Appice would do that with two bass drums, right? Chicoto, 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 right? With 2 feet, right, left, da boom, dum boom. John Bonham did it with 1 foot. Chitoto, chitonto, chitonto, ba. So chickada, 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 bow. But even faster than that, right? And so I'm still working on it to get it super smooth and get it to where I can do it every single time. But there are not a lot of drummers who can do that. It still to this day, it's astounding that he was able to do that, pull it off so cleanly at 20 years old, and then for them to have the, dare I say, the balls to play something so different and just not give a shit. And it's say, yeah, here we go. This is us. And it was so unique. And to this day, nobody else is doing anything like it.
We get to track 5. This is the Meters, Africa, and you've played a
Yes.
live version.
Yes.
Um, just to point out, I mean, you've played with. You mentioned Maceo Parker, obviously Irma Thomas, but George Porter, assume would be somebody who, again, is on your bucket list of people to work with, to meet, etc. But you've played with, I don't know how many iconic people from New Orleans, as well as you know, in the music industry, from rock, hip hop. I mean, I saw you in Chicago with Galactic, and you had Farside playing with you there, which is
Yeah.
incredible. But just the different range of the different artists that you've worked with is incredible.
Well, thank you. And you know, right now, yes, I've played with George Porter Jr. a lot, and I've played with Leono Santelli a lot. I've even played double drums with Zigaboo Modaliste. Got to play with Art Neville a bit, but now there's a new project called Geo Leo. Well, it's been around for a while, but they've revived it. Geo Leo, which is George Porter Jr. on bass, Leo Nocentelli on guitar. So two of the original Meters with Ivan Neville on keys, and they've asked me to play drums. So it's pretty amazing. So we've done 2 gigs so far, and then we're playing on Jam Cruise together in February. So this is one of these pinch me moments where, Sean, we grew up, we're running around New Orleans and the suburbs, I'm from Metairie. I know we practiced in my bedroom at my parents' house, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I'm coming from the suburbs in Metairie. And so for me, being this kid from the suburbs to get to now play with half the original Meters, it's astounding. It's still like a pinch me moment. So of course I've worked long and hard to get to that point, but it's amazing that I get to play with my musical heroes, and it's something that I don't take for granted.
And I think people who are not didn't grow up in New Orleans, especially the time we did, they probably wouldn't have realized a lot of these artists and how accessible they were playing local shows in smaller places where, this would just is unheard of when you see them in New York, you see them in the big cities and where they would really headline. But getting to see them in, you mentioned the Maple Leaf and some other venues like Tips, of course, where they still just it's a local crowd, and then you have, of course, the some fans that come from outside, but they did have such a strong. Um, they were really big in the New Orleans community.
Yeah. And, George Porter Jr. and Running Partners played a lot at Muddy Waters, right?
Mhm.
Right at the same time that we were playing our first gigs, right? So, and now George holds down Monday nights at the Maple Leaf across the street. So he does that because it keeps him fresh, right? And he's always working out new ideas, working out new songs, and that way he can fly, come home, play Monday nights with his band at the Maple Leaf. And it keeps him engaged and developing and growing as a musician. So it's quite impressive that he still wants to play that much, right? And so he's a huge influence on me, obviously musically, but just as how to be as you grow and as you grow older. So, I was touring so much with Galactic that the thought of doing any weeklies when I would come home from a 3-week tour was just I didn't consider doing that for a long time. Years and years and years ago, I used to have a Tuesday night weekly, but and then I started doing a weekly on Tuesdays with my piano trio a few years before COVID. But now I do Monday nights at the Columns, Wednesday nights. So Monday night at the Columns is a piano trio, more on the jazz end of the spectrum. Wednesday nights at the Maple Leaf is an organ trio, and that's more on the funk spectrum. And then I'll do maybe one Tuesday at the Bayou Bar, and then one Tuesday at Snug a month. So point being, Monday, Tuesdays, Wednesdays, I'm playing with some of the best musicians in town. And, George gave me the courage to start these Wednesday nights and not care if the room is full or not. It's not about that. When you go on the road, you want it to be sold out, right? But George and his example, he'll play the Monday nights and he doesn't care if there's 10 people in the room or several hundred. He's there to work out the music, right? And to play and keep that musical muscle engaged. And so I was like, well, shit, if George doesn't care, of course he cares, but that's not why he's there. The music is the priority, and the artistry and continuing to grow is the priority. So he has given me he's led by example and given me the inspiration to do that and given me the courage to do it. And now I've never been happier, right? So I think we had maybe, I don't know, 30 people at the Maple Leaf Wednesday night. It was our first one back after the summer, but sometimes we'll have almost 100 people in there. And either way, I love it. It's cool. But I've taken the lead from George on that.
We get to track 6. We go heavy again, and this is another great band, and the passing of the lead singer recently, Black Sabbath with Symptoms of the Universe.
Yes. And
is this their first album?
no, this is maybe their 5th.
1975, yeah.
Yeah, this might be the 5th or 6th record. And this record was given to me on vinyl when I was like 11 years old, before I even started really playing drum set. It was given to me by my mom and dad's friends. They had a son who was maybe 3-4 years older than me, and he had a drum set, and they would let me sit down and play his drums sometimes, and that was super, super cool. And I was like, oh my God, I want drums, right? So, but he was super into like the Police and Stuart Copeland. So he was getting rid of some stuff, and he gave me a few records, and he gave me this record. And I remember putting it on at 11 years old, and I was like, this is weird. Like, I didn't understand it, but I kept going back to it. And then once I realized how powerful and how influential Black Sabbath was, then I always keep going back to Black Sabbath as one of my favorites and one of my biggest influences. And, we're going to get into that for a second, but let me just dip back into, that Meters tune. The reason I picked that is, again, the energy level of that, and to consider that Zigaboo Modelist is playing with all of that energy, all of that fire, and he's singing at the same time. And that was a record release party for Paul McCartney that they played, and they happened to record it. And, again, as, younger developing musician, hearing that, I was like, oh, this is funk with energy, right? Unbelievable. Yeah. And then, so getting back to Black Sabbath, and, Black Sabbath is a quartet, right? The Meters are a quartet. Led Zeppelin was a quartet. John Coltrane, classic quartet, right? So there's a running theme in a lot of the music that I tend to be influenced by, is these amazing quartets. And so, I think you might be planning on asking me about this, but because we're now on the Black Sabbath tune and the influence on me of Black Sabbath, I'm currently finishing up making a record with Corrosion of Conformity, which some people, are like, whoa, how'd that happen? Well, it happened because, again, during this time, 17, 18 years old, running around town, one of the older guys, he was kind of big man on campus because he moved away and joined Corrosion of Conformity, but Pepper Keenan, right? And then once I started touring with Galactic, Pepper would reach out to me, and if he was home off the road, he would come to our Galactic gigs. And so I started becoming buddies with Pepper and started becoming really good friends with him. And even though we knew each other since we were teenagers, I really started developing my friendship with him more once he was living in Raleigh, North Carolina, and I was touring. And he would come out, we would hang, and then I would go hear him. If I had a night off and he was playing with Down or something, I would go hang with him. So we just started hanging more. And then right around the time of Katrina, he moved back to New Orleans. And he was coming to hear me. And sometimes I'd be playing with George Porter Jr. at the Maple Leaf. And he'd be like, man, the stuff y'all are doing is not that different than the stuff that I'm doing. It's still riff rock, right? So if you consider one of the Meters' most well-known tunes, Sissy Strut, the guitar and the bass are playing together, right? They're playing together. Both the guitar and the bass are playing that together. That's riff rock. And then Symptom of the Universe, it's riff rock. So Pep was like, dude, he knew what I was capable of. He knew of this band that I played in called Oxen Thrust with Scott Guyon, right? So for the listeners, you and I were in a band called Wrath of James with Peter Barnes on bass. Then me and Peter started a band called Captain Meathead with Scott Guyon. And Scott Guyon, this painting right behind me here, right? That's done by Scott. And that depicts a very interesting evening that he and I had together. But Scott Guyon went on to become an incredible artist, and he's done 3 of the Jazz Fest posters, right? As you know, but for the listeners, he did the 50th anniversary Jazz Fest poster, the one that is intentionally referencing Sergeant Pepper, and then he did the Professor Longhair and the Dr. John after that.
Hmm.
So, and then Scott and I were in a band called Oxen Thrust, and it
Right.
was drawing from influence of Black Sabbath and Led Zeppelin. So Pep knew that I had he knew that I had those influences. He knew that I had played heavier stuff before. He moved back to New Orleans. He's hearing me on a regular basis, coming and hanging, listening to me with George Porter Jr. He had been listening to me with Galactic for years. So he knew that I loved heavy music. He knew that I knew how to hit the drums because even with Galactic, I'm still hitting the drums. And it started dawning on him like, man, funk sometimes is just riff rock. So he started telling me, he's like, man, I'm gonna flip everybody's lid and get you to play on this next Corrosion of Conformity record. And I was like, let's go, let's do it.
Yeah.
So when he moved back, we would go into my studio late at night, like after midnight, from like, 1 in the morning to 5 or 6 in the morning, recording with my buddy Mike Napolitano. So we would go into the Galactic studio and we started working on this project together called Curb Feeler. So, and it was like heavier and funky but heavy. And it still hasn't come out yet, but we need to release that. But so then we started recording together some of the ideas I had for the COC stuff in the Galactic studio with
Hmm.
my buddy Mike Napolitano. And so Pep called Woody Weatherman and Mike Dean, and he was like, "Y'all, this shit is banging. Put the amps in a truck and get down here." And so they did, and we tracked that record in the arms of God. So I made that record with them in 2005, and then a lot of life has happened. Their original drummer came back, and they did some stuff with him, and then can't believe that it's like 20 years later, but they wanted to make another record, so we did. And I've worked longer and harder on this record than I have on any other record. So at the
Wow.
same time I was working on Galactic with Irma Thomas, I've been working on a record with Corrosion and Conformity.
With Pepper.
Yeah, that is highly influenced by Black Sabbath. And so, my approach, they encouraged me to, you know, to go for it. I mean, Pepper's like, bro, give me more, give me more. He's like, I want it more fierce, you know, more furious, right? He wants it like just sounding like mountains crumbling. So my approach on this record was to sound like John Bonham and Bill Ward meet up at a bar, and they walk into the bar and realize that there's a punk rock show going on, and they have to brawl their way out together. So that's what I'm trying to make it sound like. And Pep's like, well, you did that, brother. So he's very happy with the record. So am I. I've been listening to it. Uh, I just talked to the producer yesterday. He sent me the most recent mixes, and it's gonna be a double record. It's like over an hour long. They want it to be on vinyl, so it's gonna be two vinyl, and I'm super proud of it. But Pep and I have become very good friends over the years, and it's like when he calls me, he's like, "You want to make a rock and roll record?" I'm like, "Let's go, let's do it."
I'm. I think when Pepper was in Graveyard Rodeo, I'm pretty
Mhm.
sure probably pre Wrath of James. This might have been our other thing with some with Pete and before you, but there was Pariah Descent, and I think we might have played with Graveyard Rodeo. I don't remember if Graveyard Rodeo we opened for them at Jimmy's, but there was a band we opened for at Jimmy's, and I don't remember who it was. Um, but that was the only time we played at Jimmy's because most of it was like Muddy Waters and stuff when we played.
Right.
And I remember Pepper on the scene from same circles, but then he was always playing. And I think he was in Graveyard Rodeo before, and then he went straight to COC from there. So
Yep.
long history. And then it only can happen in New Orleans because everyone kind of knows each other and everything kind of just it's a big kind of melting with people together.
Yeah. And now with social media and we're putting it out there, letting people know that we've been working on this record, it makes a lot of sense to a lot of people. But when we first did that first record, a lot of people were like, "Whoa, how did that happen?" I'm like,
Yeah.
"Me, it makes perfect sense." Pep and I have been hanging out for a long, long time, and have been friends for a long, long time. And how can you grow up, in the '80s and not be influenced by Black Sabbath and Led Zeppelin? And I know how to hit the drums hard, so let's go.
We get to track 7. This moves a little bit in a different direction, but still has that sound and funk. This is Damian Marley. Welcome to Jamrock.
Yeah. So my wife and I got married in 2018, and we had already been to Jamaica twice, and we loved it. And then when we were considering where do we want to go for our honeymoon, said, well, I know that we've already been to Jamaica, but hear me out. I want to go to this place, Goldeneye.
Yeah.
And yeah, you're
Ian
not.
Fleming's house. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
Actually, I was just going to ask you, did you see Goldeneye? And I thought this probably way on another end of the spectrum. Okay.
Yeah. So I was like, okay, that sounds great. Let's do it. If you're excited about it. So she started showing it to me. And at the time, I had never even seen a whole James Bond movie because, growing up, I might see 15 minutes of it on HBO, or I might have seen 10 minutes because there was a marathon on AMC, and I might see 10 minutes of a movie on the bus or something, right? But I had never sat down and watched a movie from beginning to end. So I didn't know much about it really, But I was like, okay, well, if we're going to do this, let's make it fun. Let's learn more about it. And so Lauren and I started watching the movies from the beginning, right? Starting with Doctor.
Wow.
And I was like, oh, this is super fun, super cool. And then we both started reading about Ian Fleming, and then both started reading about Chris Blackwell. And as you know, but for some of the listeners, Chris Blackwell is a Jamaican, a white Jamaican that, of British descent, of course, but he started Island Records, and then his mom was a friend of Ian Fleming, and Ian Fleming wrote all of the James Bond novels at Goldeneye. And
That
so
was his house in Jamaica.
it was his house. And so you can stay in the Fleming Villa. And, we've gotten a tour of it a couple of different times. And so we love staying in a beach hut, right? Right on the water, right on the cove. It's amazing. And so we went for our honeymoon, and we got there, and we just had this instant sense of, oh, wow, this is our place, right? Like, we get this. This is amazing. It's awesome. It's kind of rustic, sand under your feet all the time, but it's like 5-star rustic, right? It's like, the service is amazing. You want for nothing. Food's great. You're always on the water, and we just love it, right? It's so we feel like it resonates with us. And so now, long story short, we go every year in June, and this year was our 6th time going. So each time I go, when we went for our honeymoon, I was like, oh, let me bring the first Ian Fleming novel. So Casino Royale, I brought it and read it on the beach, and it's super fun to be reading that, looking at the same water that he was looking at when
Hmm.
he wrote these books, right? So now it's the tradition that I bring the next book. And so this year I read the sixth book is Doctor No. So even though that's the first movie, but it's the sixth book. So it's fun. It's like we make it super fun. And it's, we started planning our trip for next year in June. We just started planning it the other day. So it's something that we look forward to. It's something that we feel has become part of our relationship. And we've become friends with a lot of the people that we've met there, right? Some of the staff.
Have you jammed when you're there?
Well, I mean, the answer is not with Lauren and I, but I'm on Jam Cruise every year. So, I have played in Jamaica for some things, but not when we go for part of it. I tried to deliberately just like, decompress and just, kind of tune out and turn off and detach and just focus on being with, being together. So the reason I picked this tune is, there's a lot of Jamaican music that I've started to fall in love with, right? But this song, like you hear it all the time, and
Hmm.
but if we're gonna cook or we're gonna hang out, and they play a lot of backgammon in Jamaica. So if we're gonna like sit on the back on our back patio and maybe drink some Aperol spritz and play backgammon, which I hope to do this evening. We when I start this song, it's like an instant like okay, we're like, we try to have what I call
Get
gold.
you in the mood.
Yes, exactly. It makes us instantly happy, and whether we're sitting on our front porch or our back porch, we listen to a lot of Jamaican music, and so sometimes we're listening to a GoldenEye playlist. Sometimes we're listening to, there's a bar there called Shabine, and that's where we usually watch the sunset. There's another restaurant called Bizo. So whether we're listening to a Bizo dinner playlist or a Shabine sunset playlist or one of the playlists that we make, this song is usually always on it. And it just instantly makes me happy. Like,
Hmm.
so we try to have these evenings that I'll call a golden eye evening, where we might cook and then, have some wine or Aperol spritz on our back patio, listening to Jamaican music, playing backgammon. And this song just jumped out at me like, oh, it always makes me happy when we hear this song. It makes us feel like, oh yeah, we're in a happy place at the moment.
Yeah, that's a great story. And I would love to see Goldeneye. I've not been to Jamaica, but
It's
obviously a
incredible.
massive James Bond fan and
Oh, very
on the
cool.
whole franchise and everything. And we have
Yeah, we'll
the next
have
episode.
a,
The podcast is going to be a special episode around the theme opening songs from the Bond films.
incredible.
Uh,
So yeah, well then that's awesome. I guess we have a lot to talk about because now Lauren and I have watched a lot of documentaries, and for like anniversary presents and stuff, she gets me different books, and um, like there are these gigantic, thick anthologies about the makings of the movies, and it's very cool. But there's a documentary you might be interested in. You've probably watched it already, and I think it's called "The Songs of James Bond," or
okay.
the music of James Bond. And if you just search for it, but it's about a lot of the theme songs, and Shirley Bassey songs, and a lot of the different songs and the composers and the people who sang them. So that documentary is fascinating. And
Yeah,
you've probably seen it already, but you have,
I haven't, but it's definitely got something to check out.
yeah, you definitely, I think, will find it interesting.
Um, we now go to track 8. This is Wynton Marsalis, another New Orleans, just icon. Um, oh, but on the third day.
Yes. Happy Feet Blues. We
Yeah.
That's the in parentheses, and we usually call this Happy Feet Blues. And this is Herlin Riley on drums, who was another one of my big mentors. One of my favorite drummers, favorite people. And, for example, Wednesday night, I played at the Maple Leaf and I played 7 to 10 at the Maple Leaf. And then I hightailed it to the Bayou Bar to go hear Hurlin. And he was playing till 11. So I listen to Hurlin, and then he got me to sit in, got me to, get up and play the last song of the evening. So I continue to get so much inspiration from going to listen to Hurlin. And, he's been very, 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 very welcoming and encouraging to me, my whole development and career. And, he's come and done master classes for me at my drum camps. And Shannon Powell, one of the great New Orleans drummers, he recently went through some health stuff. So Hurlin and I worked together to do a benefit for Shannon. And we've become closer through all of that. This year, Tipititas is going to induct Hurlin Riley into the Walk of Fame. And so, I've just gotten to be closer and closer with Hurlin. And that's one thing I don't know that we've mentioned yet, but would like to touch on that. That, in 2018, Galactic, we pooled our resources and bought Tipititas, which is...
I was going to ask you about that. That's incredible. Yeah. I mean, a place that we've gone to as kids, and now you're co-owner of it. It's amazing.
Yeah. It's crazy. Another pinch me situation. But so Hurlin obviously is, one of my favorite drummers and such an inspiration. But this song is absolutely one of the funkiest things I've ever heard. And, we talk a lot about second line drumming, and for your listeners who hear, what is second line drumming? And to me, this is the holy grail of second line drumming. This is like the creme de la creme, tour de force. This is the Super Bowl of, the Super Bowl champion of all time of New Orleans second line drumming. So there are countless songs we could play, but especially with my students, I'm like, if you can transcribe and start practicing this song, this is going to be everything you need to know. If you can play everything that he does in the first intro of this song, of course, over the whole song, but then you're going to be able to play anything you need in a second line context. Now, with this intro, I loop it up. I've had my engineer make loops of just, 2-bar loops here and there, like people would do in hip hop. But I do it with this to practice to. So you can practice funk to this. You can practice second line to this. You can practice all kinds of different stuff. And it's just, to me, one of the most inspiring, funky tracks ever recorded. And I keep going back to it. And it's just like, it's just so incredibly masterfully done. And the more I go back to it and the more I compare it to other stuff, I'm like, yep, still the heavyweight champion of New Orleans second line.
You talked briefly about your students, but can you tell us more about the Drum Academy? And this is something, when did you start this and how long has it been going?
Yeah, so great question. It went live in 2016. And what it is people can subscribe, and they can subscribe monthly or they can buy an annual subscription. And it is access to me. So what you get is I do monthly live Zooms on the first Monday of the month. And then so people get to tune into these live Zooms where sometimes I'm in my studio demonstrating stuff. So you get to ask me questions. I demonstrate stuff. We talk about drums, of course, but we talk about career stuff and, anything that any of my subscribers might want to talk about, right? So you get access to that and you get to ask questions and you get to participate in that. And then it's also, you get to access my entire library of courses, video lessons, and ebooks that I've been putting together. So that is what the Drum Academy is. It's access to me and my community and the forum, and then also access to my all of these courses I've put together. So people are like, I love your your New Orleans second line stuff. Okay, great. Well, these are the lessons you want to check out. I love
Yeah.
your buzz rolls. Great. Here's the lessons you want to check out on that. Okay, I want to develop my ghost notes. Okay, so the course I'm working on right now, which I'm going to release in October, is Ghost Note Mastery, right? And then starting today, actually, we're running a sale on my ebook. So the ebook is all the PDFs that go with all the videos. And so occasionally I run sales on things that are in the academy, and I'll run a sale on something to the general public. But as a member of the academy, you have access to all of that all the time.
What's are you able to track like the ages of some of your students or people who subscribe? What's the do you have a possibility of the youngest person that's in there?
Yeah, so great question. And I've been doing some private lessons over the last couple of weeks since I've had a little more time home. And my youngest student at the moment is 9.
Wow.
Yeah. And he comes in with his mom and sometimes with his dad. And and then I've got guys, who are in their 70s, mid 70s. And so the range is very wide. And I've grown to really enjoy teaching beginners because it's challenging for me. And I have to, it almost like supercharges your teaching abilities. You have to figure out a way to connect and
Hmm.
how to get it to where they can play a beat and play a beat to a song. And sometimes, in these last couple of weeks, I had a guy come in his mid 50s, same age as me, and he had never sat behind a drum set before, even though it's in his mid 50s. And his wife bought him his first lesson as an anniversary present. So I had to figure out how to teach him a beat. Now, luckily, I've got ways of doing this, but I started off showing him some of the things I usually show people, but then I also showed him one of the things that my 9-year-old student showed me that he learned from his previous teacher. And so I was like, oh, that's effective. So let me show that to this 53-year-old guy. So point being, I'm learning how to, you have to learn how to connect with each individual. And each individual is different. So you can't just, cookie cutter be like, here's the stuff, here's the information. You have to come up with creative ways of connecting. And then what that does is, oh, okay, I'm going to add that. In this course, I'm going to mention that. And so it just fine tunes your teaching abilities and makes you a better teacher. So,
Yeah.
to answer your question, most of my demographic is guys from their 40s on up, guys who discover that they have more time now, like their kids are more grown, and maybe their kids are off in school, they're approaching retirement, and they want to spend more time playing the drums. I get a lot of that, but then I also have 9-year-old students as well.
Well, good luck with that. I'll make sure to share the links to the Drum Academy website and how people can get in touch with you if they're interested in that.
Yeah, StantonMooreDrumAcademy.com, and then support at StantonMooreDrumAcademy.com. If anybody's got any questions, just you can reach me there. And then I'm always running specials on membership, and I'm always, each month I'm running, different sales on different courses. And starting today, I'm, for example, running a an offer on my ebook, which is up to 400 pages now. It's crazy. And it's years and years and years and years and years of writing.
We get to track 9. This is the last of the New Orleans icons, or titans in your list. Professor Longhair, Her Mind Is Gone. And this is a remix version or remastered?
So it might be remastered, but that just happened to be the version that I found on Spotify. But the importance of this song is that Johnny Vodakovich, the guy that I consider my main teacher and mentor, along with Marty Hurley, but on the drum set, Johnny Vodakovich really took me under his wing again when I was about 17 years old. And Johnny played with Professor Longhair, and he made this record before I started studying with him. But, I love including something that Johnny did, but I thought that this song would be great to include because Tipitina's was started by 14 people who pulled their resources and pulled their money together to buy this place called the 501 Club as a place for people like Professor Longhair and Earl King and James Booker, for these New Orleans legends to play, right? So they bought 501 Club and then they renamed it Tipitina's, which is a song title from Professor Longhair. That's one of his songs, is Tipitina. So they named the club Tipitina's, and Professor Longhair wound up playing there a good bit. And Johnny,
the logo of Tipitina's is a picture of Professor Longhair, right?
Correct.
I remember. Yeah.
Yeah, correct. And then Johnny Vodakovich toured with Professor Longhair, and then they became very tight on the road, and then they made this record, Crawfish Fiesta. And in my opinion, it's one of my favorite Professor Longhair records because usually he would go in the studio kind of with a band that was assembled to play the session. But this was a working band that toured together that had the opportunity to be tight. And so this song is significant for several reasons. One being that it's Professor Longhair, the reason Tipitina's, or one of the main reasons Tipitina's exists. I'm a co-owner of Tipitina's, which is one of the most important things I've ever been a part of in my life. And my mentor, Johnny Vodakovich, played on this groove. And this groove, the sticking, right? The way that he's playing this groove is something that I've taken and stolen and used countless times. So this song is important to me for all of those reasons, right?
Mm-hmm. In Professor Longhair, though, for those maybe not from New Orleans, his music is always going to be surrounded around Mardi Gras and Carnival, as well as obviously linked to Tipitina's. And now I think you're part of the team that's going to carry on this torch and keep it lit, so to speak.
Yeah, hopefully, it's such a beloved place, and luckily, knock on wood, we're doing better than ever. And a lot of that is because we try to make it palpable for the fans who come and for the artists and the bands that play. We try to make it palpable on both sides that we give a shit, that we care. And, things like just making it so the backstage it makes sense for the artist, right? There's, decent furniture to sit on. Everywhere you sit, there's a charger to charge your phone. When you sit down, you look And we replaced all these cabinets with glass door, sliding door coolers. So when you sit down, you see that your entire rider is right there. Now, that's not something that's tough to do. Sometimes we get to a venue, the rider's not there, and we're like, oh, well, I want a snack. Well, there's nothing there. Well, when you're homeless, touring the world as an artist, when you show up and everything you requested is there, you feel like people care, right?
Hmm.
And it's not being a prima donna or anything. It's just like you come off the bus and the backstage is your home for the day. And you sit down and you can see through clear glass doors that we cared enough to make sure that we knew when your bus was arriving and we made sure that everything that you requested is there. The artists care. And then they tell their agents, and then their agents usually have 10 or more other artists. So we're getting more better artists. And then the people, when they come in, they can hear that we've invested in new sound, and they can tell that the place is still funky. I like to say what we like to do is make it functional,
Hmm.
right? Make Tipitinas functional and keep it funky, but make it a little less gross.
Yeah.
And
You,
you know, and so you want it to be funky when you walk in, You don't want it to feel like marble floors in the bathrooms or anything. But you also don't want it to smell bad. So we've done things to, make sure that I mean, when we acquired it, there was a stainless steel trough, right? So now we've gotten rid of that and made sure that there are actual separated urinals, right? So not to get too, graphic, but so that when you walk in, you're like, huh, has it always been like this? But it feels better. It smells better. And
yeah.
those things make a difference. It just makes it feel like we care, because we do, because it is our favorite venue in the entire world.
And I remember, growing up, Tipitinas was for both. It was for the locals, but also for when tourists and people came in, they wanted to hear music. Everyone told them to go to Tipitinas. There's a certain a few spots that they said if you want to hear great music from New Orleans or that's going on right now, you go there. And then for the locals, I mean, so many great artists have played there from definitely in the funk and soul area, but also you can look at. I mean, I saw Ice-T, Body Count play there, and
Yeah,
tons of UK bands would play, and that was a venue. When you see them in a place like that, I mean, Jane's Addiction, the first time I saw them was in there,
yeah,
which now they're huge, but back then to see them in somewhere like Tips was an amazing venue to see them. And so,
yeah. And to your point, it's going to sound like I'm getting away from your point for a second, but I promise I'm coming right back to it. So, Professor Longhair is considered the architect of New Orleans funk. And, Tips was started for him to have a home. And then the Neville brothers started playing Tips all the time and really helped kind of develop Tips into more of what it is today.
yeah,
And you might have the Neville brothers on, Friday night, and then on Saturday night, or maybe during the week, but you would have everything from New Orleans icons, Dr. John, Dirty Dozen, Rebirth, and then eventually Galactic started playing on, 6 to 8 times a year on a lot of the big holidays. So Mardi Gras, Jazz Fest, New Year's Eve, Halloween, we took over, and once Neville Brothers weren't doing those dates, we started playing those dates. But you've got all these New Orleans bands in there, but then you also had the first time that a lot of giant rock bands played New Orleans, they played Tipitinas. So
yeah.
Soundgarden, Pearl Jam, to your point, Jane's Addiction, Rage Against the Machine. Those bands all played Tips the first time they played New Orleans. And then, I was in the mosh pit for Bad Brains and
Yeah.
Fishbone, And so it's such a, yes, iconic place, but such a versatile place
Right.
too. We had Lyle Lovett and his large ensemble just a couple of months ago, and so it's, I'm just thinking of things recently, and we've been getting more indie stuff lately, which is great. But now that those agents and artists know that we care, they're bringing more of those there. And so when we might be closed on a Tuesday or Wednesday, now we're starting to get more of these indie bands, and it's great. It's because people know that we care.
Yeah. Well, congratulations on that, and I wish you the best. And I can't wait to come see a show when I'm back in New Orleans. There.
Yeah, absolutely. You absolutely have to come.
We get to track 10. We kind of we go back to where we started. This is again the great John Coltrane, "My One and Only Love."
Yeah. And so this song is another one of these songs that when you put it on, it just instantly creates a vibe. And I thought this would be a nice way to kind of to wind down. And this is a lovely tune that you could put on, at the end of an evening, or it's a great song to wind down to. And it's just one of those songs that is one of the most romantic songs of all time. And but yet it's just a great song to kind of wind down to. And I find it's one of these songs that I just find myself coming back to time and time and time again. This whole record, right? And for the listeners, if they're not aware of this record yet, this whole record is just
Johnny Hartman's on it.
Yeah. And he's singing on the whole record. And so it's a vocal record. So even though John Coltrane, most of his material is instrumental, and then as we were discussing, after the classic quartet, it gets even more avant-garde. But this record is with the classic quartet, with one of the greatest singers of all time. And so it's just one of the most romantic and just one of the most beautiful and lush records of all time. And so I was like, man, I was looking through some of my playlists, and I came across this one, and I was like, oh yeah, this is a great way to wind down this playlist and just kind of and wind down any evening.
So looking at your back catalog, your career, and who you've played with, are there any still kind of artists that you would like to play with that you haven't been able to play with yet? Or is there any direction in music that you want to go, like more possibly film scores or producing?
Yeah, I love, of course, I love playing film stuff. I love producing. But as I get older, I'm trying to focus on what I just truly, absolutely love to do, and that is to play, to play the drums. And so that's why I started adding these Monday nights at the Columns, Wednesday nights at the Maple Leaf, so that when I come back from flying out and going wherever we're going, it's pretty automatic. At the beginning of each month, I know that I've got to plan next month what my Mondays are going to be, what my Wednesdays are going to be. Sometimes, I might have to leave on a Tuesday, and so I can't do the Wednesday. But in general, I know, okay, I'm coming back, flying back in town, and I look forward to playing, and that's what I just absolutely love to do. And I am, developing my studio all the time. I'm flying to Nashville on the 9th of this month to go purchase some Neve preamps. And, Neve is one of the most well-known, UK brand. And in studio world, Neve is one of the most legendary preamp and equalizers. So I'm going to go get these new preamps and EQs to add to my studio. So point being, I'm adding to my studio all the time. I love recording. A lot of this COC record that we've been talking about started with me and Pepper in my studio, him plugging a guitar into my direct, just plugging in direct and using some amp modeling just to get the ideas started. And then so I'm in my studio all the time. I love filming my courses, making my courses, releasing my courses, and connecting with people. The thing I love is when people come up to me and say, man, that lesson that you released or that course that you released, that really set off some light bulbs for me and helped improve my drumming in a way that my band is noticing, right? That makes me feel like I'm what I'm doing is making an impact. So filming in my studio, recording in my studio, I love doing all that, want to keep doing more of that. And just, I mean, it's funny. It's like my wife and I went to the beach last weekend and I'm feeling like, I know my October's about to get nuts, right? But I'm feeling like, oh wow, it feels a little slow right now. I feel like I just need to pick up the pace. And I'm like, what are you talking about? You have a double record coming out with Corrosion of Conformity. You just released a record with Irma
Are
Thomas.
you going to play with them? Any live dates?
Yeah, I'm going to South America with them in January.
Okay.
I'm making a record in late this month in October, making another record with Robert Walter, Eddie Roberts. And Eddie Roberts just texted me this morning to see if I'm available to go to Nicaragua in March. And I'm like, yep, I am. So, it's hilarious. It's like, even when I feel like, okay, things feel a little like, just, a little settled, like in a good way. But I'm like, you're about to be busier. And this always happens, right? Whenever I'm not like crazy busy, I'm like, okay, what's going on? I'm like, oh no, you're busy enough. Like, just enjoy these moments. And tonight I'm hoping to have a golden eye evening with my wife, and probably I might listen to this playlist.
Stanton, thank you for your time, and it's great to catch up with you and to obviously reminisce about old times in New Orleans and us growing up, but to hear your story and to learn about your 10 tracks and just the best, more successful Galactic and all your other projects you're doing. I can't wait to hear the Corrosion the COC. I think that's going to be great. I'm gonna listen for your drums to see if I can hear somewhere you're putting a little more funk, a little more jazz, a little more kind of
well, I think you're gonna hear it. You're gonna hear it.
I say to everybody on the show that comes on to be kind, be humble, be love. And I wish you the best of everything. And it's great to thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, I've really enjoyed this, man. Great talking to you, and thank you for thinking of me.
Of course. Thank you.